U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he will apply a reciprocal tariff to several countries. The president threatens that these nations will have to produce their goods in the U.S. to reduce tariff. The candidates for the presidency of Ecuador are intensifying their activities in the final phase of the electoral campaign before the runoff on April the 13th. In Myanmar, the death toll of Friday's earthquake has surpassed 3,000 people. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll be with the news. Stay with us. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he will apply reciprocal tariff to several countries. The president threatens that these nations will have to produce their goods in the U.S. to reduce tariff. Trump decided to impose tariffs of at least 10% on all countries of the world and a higher percentage on all partner countries, declaring a trade war on the world with the highest import taxes in a century, all under the pretext of industrializing his country. During his speech, the U.S. president denominated the entire planet, blaming foreign nations for the crisis in the quality of life, services, and production that the U.S. is being through. In addition, Trump describes instruments such as the free trade agreement with Mexico and Canada as a disaster, while maintaining the narrative of criminalizing migrants using the pretext the extinct Tren de Aragua. These announcements represent the biggest rollback of free trade in 2 centuries, representing a major change in global trade and economic policy.
And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people.
In this context, President Trump spoke about a new tariff specifically for the Asian giant.
But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries. We didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thanks, Howard. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart.
However, the U.S. president said that there will be consequences for countries that do not pay the tariffs or refuse to pay them.
Our cabinet has plenty of hats. But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate. because the money is so enormous that you're talking about. There's never been probably anything like it in terms of the enormity, and there are a lot of bad things happen at the people that do the check-in, and they're looking at 10-year jail sentences if they do play. We're going to treat them so good, but if they cheat, the repercussions are going to be extremely strong. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. We're right now the biggest market in the world. We had a great...
The recent poll revealed the disapproval of President Donald Trump's handling of federal management as well as international conflicts. Let's take a look. According to the study, immigration had a 49 points scored compared to 50% who disapprove of how the president is handling the immigration crisis. Regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, 54% disapprove and only 44% approve of it. The survey specifies that regarding the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, 41% approve of Trump's handling of the situation and 56% disapprove. As for his administration's federal performance, President Trump has a 55% disapproval rating, with 43% saying he has done nothing. Regarding Social Security, 56% of U.S. citizens feel insecure, while 41% approve of it. Regarding the handling of the economy, 58% disapprove of Trump's, while 4% believe the country is on the right track. In the United States, Democratic Judge Susan Crawford triumphs over far-right GOP candidate in Washington elections earned a seat on the Supreme Court. Crawford's victory implied a heavy defeat for U.S. President Donald Trump, his right-hand man Elon Musk, and the Make America Great Again movement. Musk prompted the Department of Government Efficiency, those lost millions of dollars for having invested in the electoral campaign of Republican Brad Schmel. In consequence, far-right sectors ramp up their criticism of Musk as they blame him for putting the Dodge in dire straits. For her part, during her victory in the speech after winning over the Midwestern state, Judge Crawford highlighted that justice was not for sale in the U.S.
So today, Wisconsinites fended off an unprecedented attack on our democracy. That's right. Our fair elections and our Supreme Court. And Wisconsins stood up and said loudly that justice does not have a price. Our courts are not for sale.
On Wednesday, Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, David Campson, addressed during an interview the recent visit of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to the Caribbean, highlighting the bloc's strong response to Washington's policies, targeting the Cuban medical mission.
We stood unified. We had one position. We articulated that position, and we explained our reality. Look, this is our truth. This is our reality. This is what the interests of our people demands, and this is where we stand. And, you know, if you proceed the way you said you're going to proceed, well, you know, we won't, but this is where we stand. And that has obviously had an impression. And so I think that is a great takeaway for me. And I think an important part of it, Pearson, is that the Caribbean people were obviously behind the positions that our leaders took.
Yes.
Because the Caribbean people know the Cuban Medical Corporation, and they know what benefit it has brought to us.
In this context, Ambassador Commission touched on the current U.S. foreign policy, which he stated evidence a return to the Monroe Doctrine approach of the 19th century.
We are going to face some challenges with the foreign policy of the Trump administration. We can perhaps discuss that because I think the policy that they're pursuing is a hark back to American foreign policy of the 19th century.
Indeed.
You know, where, the Monroe Doctrine, the system of the American system of political economy. We could discuss that, and that is going to produce some challenges for us.
Let's take a very short break, but remember you can join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. In Argentina, political and social organizations have denounced the mismanagement of the Maldives' claimly President Javier Milei's administration. The accusation was made by the Justicialist Party, presided by Cristina Fernandez, on the occasion of the anniversary of the beginning of the Maldives War. The organization accused the president of over-idealization, underfunding, and diplomatic malpractice, putting at risk the territorial integrity of the country. This after Milei's speech at the ceremony, where he expressed his wish that the people in the Maldives decide to be Argentinians. The organization points out that the best way to pay tribute to the men and women who suffered the Maldives War is to support the state policy of the claim, on the claim as a national cause. In relation to the Maldives issue, this April 2nd in Argentina, as every year, an emotional act will be held in honor of the fallen and veterans of that war. The act, with torches in the square of San Martin, reaffirms their Argentine commitment to the sovereignty of the islands. The testimonies of the veterans reveal the suffering live both in conflict and in the subsequent abandonment by the states, as well as a deep psychological consequence of social abandonment and total lack of recognition. The National Union of Construction and Allied Workers of Panama announced a demonstration to demand the repeal of the Social Security law. The union confirmed its support for the teacher strikes that will take place this Thursday, April the 3rd, and Friday, April the 4th, against the reform of the Social Security Fund. At the same time, the organizations rejected the dam project on the Indian River, the high cost of living, and assured that it will mobilize in defense of national security. Meanwhile, the General Secretary of Suntrax denounced that corruption in the country is on the rise, while poverty pensions are being approved, military bases are being negotiated, and illegal mines are being reopened. In this context, a survey reported that 67% of the Panamanian population disapproves of the government of President José Raúl Mulino during his first 100 days in office. Mulino has a negative perception of 16% in January 2025. The number increased to 39.5%. Likewise, 64.7% of those questions believe that Mulino's government is on the wrong track, an increase of 28.3% compared to January of this year. The candidates for the presidency of Ecuador are intensifying their activities in the final phase of the electoral campaign before the vote on April the 13th. The candidates of the Carondelet Palace are trying to convince the electorate with sectoral meetings and media interviews in the final phase. In this sense, the presidential candidate Luis González of the Citizens' Revolution Movement proposed financial and administrative measures to reactivate the popular and solidarity economy. On the other hand, President Daniel Noboa spoke about his recent meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, pointing out that he is not acting as head of the executive. Ecuador Defense Minister Giancarlo Lofredo confirmed on Tuesday that the government of President Daniel Noboa will invest resources in U.S. military bases in the territory. Ecuadorian found out in a news broadcast that their government is investing resources in the installation of a Washington base in their country. Maps, plans, and preparations for the arrival of the troops in Ecuador were revealed. It was then that the Minister of Defense, under investigation for the disappearance and later execution of 4 miners in Guayaquil, finally acknowledged the fact. He also announced the arrival of a mission of a private foreign mercenary company.
That's right, we have deals in force that comprise different sectors. Infrastructures, for instance, we sealed a very important agreement with the United States, by means of which we are making investments on both sides, so as part of it we count up with several facilities, not only the ones reported by the CNN.
Let's take a last break, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For financial break, don't go away. Welcome back. The former president of Costa Rica, Nobel Peace Prize winner Oscar Arias, confirmed that the U.S. has revoked his diplomatic passport. On his social network, Arias criticized Donald Trump's government, specifically for the way it has dealt with war between Russia and Ukraine. The former president also commented that he has no trade plan to the U.S. and reiterated criticism he has historically made to that country for its military investment.
Without freedom of ideas and thoughts, there cannot be any wisdom, and there cannot be any public freedom without freedom of speech. These are phrases said by true Democrats. What they mean by these phrases is that the adversary who thinks differently from the government in office cannot be seen as a sin, but it ought to be seen rather as a blessing. And many of you will remember that I have gone through life building bridges to unite and see eye to eye, and not to build walls to divide. Now, I do not know the reason why they have revoked my visa, but I accept the decision, because the government in Washington has the right to such decision.
In Russia, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov hosted on Wednesday his Vietnamese counterpart with Son as both nations continue to threaten bilateral relations. The meeting comes as Moscow and Hanoi mark 75 years of diplomatic relations, as well as the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War and of Vietnam's independence declared on September 2nd, 1945. The Russian Foreign Minister praised the development of friendly and truly fraternal relations and the practical expression of both people's solidarity in fight for their independence and interests. Lavrov added that past experiences provided the basis for an intensive and substantive political dialogue at all levels and promoted trade and economic ties, defense and security cooperation, cultural exchange, and overall a closer interaction on the international stage.
The comprehensive strategic partnership between Russia and Vietnam has been developing very actively at various levels lately. In particular, the state visit of President Putin to Vietnam, which took place in July 2024, gave a new impetus to the further development of strengthening relations between our countries. Relations between Russia and Vietnam have recently achieved very great results.
Мы уделяем приоритетное внимание ситуации в Азиатско-Тихоокеанском регионе.
We pay priority attention to the situation in the Asia-Pacific region. We advocate the formation of an architecture of equal, indivisible security in the region, an architecture adequate to modern realities, based on generally recognized norms of international law. And in this regard, of course, we are concerned about the counterproductive attempts to form a network of narrow format, essentially bloc alliances. And in this sense, we welcome Vietnam's readiness to fully promote the development of interaction and dialogue partnership between Russia and ASEAN.
Готовность Вьетнама всемерно способствовать развитию взаимодействия, диалогового партнерства между Россией и ASEAN.
Changing topics, in Myanmar, state television has reported the death toll of Friday's earthquake has surpassed 3,000 people. Precisely, MR TV reported late on Wednesday the powerful seismic has left 3,003 people dead and more than 4,500 injured. In addition, in neighboring Thailand, the death toll from the quake rose 22, with hundreds of building damage and 72 people missing. In this context, on Wednesday, rescued pulled 2 men alive from the ruins of a hotel in Myanmar's capital and a third from a guest house in another city 5 days after the magnitude 7.7 quake. One of the survivors, who was pulled out following a coordinated operation conducted by Chinese rescue team, was said to be in stable condition after spending nearly 125 hours buried among the ruins of the hotel building. We have come to the end of this brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English and from the south of Myanmar, thank you for watching.